Okay.
Like that shirt.
Okay. Perfect. So good evening and good morning. First, I did not get a chance to share yet. Antinit, I thought that in Australia, I guess in Australia we are upside down. Antinita asked me to share that she did not end up making her cake because she was so glued to the lesson that she just did not end up making the cake. But she has informed us right before the lesson started that indeed the cake was made and indeed the cake was good. So
no, I didn't say that. I said the cake was eaten.
okay. Beautiful. So we are going to start again, as usual, with a blessing for the sponsors of this course. May they be blessed with good health, parnasa, nachas from their children and their families for now and forever. And let us say amen.
Amen. Amen.
Word of gratitude. Auntie Nina, what is your gratitude this morning, tomorrow morning?
Yes, well, lots of things, but I am very grateful for the fact that a woman whose mother was niftar about 6 months ago, I think, and although this woman herself is not Torah observant as yet, she's very, very respectful of her mother's wishes, and she, this is a woman whose mother had the most perfect, if I can put it like that, the most kosher, with Rebbetzin, Rochel Gordon coming down from Launceston, she helped me do the Tahara here in Hobart. And that was under very difficult conditions, but it was respectfully done. And also before that, the Niftara was not left alone, except for half an hour after she died. She was only alone. And I managed to actually guide her down, went past every obstacle. They were very difficult. The hospital orderlies, they can get, this is our territory, you do what we say, but no, Hashem's word prevails. So why am I bringing this up now? Because I hadn't seen the daughter, the woman who's, I guess she's about 50. I hadn't seen her for a while, but she's been making contact with me now. And yesterday, she took me to another Jewish woman's friend, and we had 3 Jewish women, and made sure, she's so respectful, she made sure that everything, I boiled my own eggs, and I took my own boiled eggs, and we shared that. And and I got all the kosher stuff from the shops with the RU or kosher K on it, Australia K, and it was really very, very nice, and I'm grateful for that.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to take just a moment over here and shut the noise of my Hatzalah dispatch radio so that we don't get all the chirps coming in. I'm just going to put this onto silent mode. Should have done that before, but it doesn't usually actually go off. Here, silent mode. There's been a lot of activity recently. Winter's coming, snowbirds are coming, and the activity level goes up. So thank you, Auntie Nina, for sharing that. Leib Moshe, what are you grateful for this evening?
I'm grateful for tomorrow to be able to spend it with my family, and I'm grateful for the young men that you sent over to help me put on tefillin.
Aww.
Great. Very good. I love your shirt.
Isn't it good?
It is. Auntie Nina, for some reason, your picture is coming up upside down on our screen here.
I know. You told me why. I'm in Australia. I told
Maybe
Uncle
if you
David,
flip the phone the other way, would it work better or no?
Nope. I like it upside down because I told I wasn't saying Tachnun today because I'm doing LA time.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And Joan, what are you grateful for?
First of all, I'm so sorry to have to be so late, but thank you. Well, I'm grateful that the last 2 days I've been able to see my friend Jeff in rehab, and that he's talking a little bit better now, just a little bit. So I'm grateful that he's so close that I'm able to get over there to
Great.
see him. Yeah.
Yes, he should have a refuah shalema.
Amen.
His name is Yisrael ben Shena Medela, as far as I understand.
Yes,
That,
that's right.
that correct?
Yes. On your mark, get set, go what? Away.
Isn't it good?
Okay, and I am grateful this afternoon that we have a powerful Hanukkah set up and ready to rumble. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be spectacular. It already started in some places, and I am very excited for the way that will go. So, to start off, the way we usually do, yeah, I like this one better, but I'm gonna have to read it. But it's a good one. So give me a moment. Where did I write this down? Here. An anti-Semitic mayor wants to solve his Jewish problem. Remember, we were speaking last week about the Jews in Decatur? He prays that his favorite US presidents should appear to him in a dream to advise him on what to do with his Jews. So on the first night, George Washington appears to him. Never tell a lie. That's all you need to do, and your problem will solve itself. False, the politician yells when he wakes up in the morning. The next night, FDR appears to him in a dream and tells him the only thing to fear is fear itself. That will solve your problem. Lies, he says as he gets out of the bed the next morning. The next evening, he goes to bed early, assuming that the third time will be his charm. And indeed, his favorite president appears and he can see his face so clearly. It's Abraham Lincoln, who says, go visit the theater.
I
didn't get it.
Abraham Lincoln was shot
assassinated.
outside a thing. So he was telling the mayor.
Right.
He was telling the mayor.
In the Ford Theater.
Ah. That's an American joke.
Yeah. So here's another one that we're going to talk about when we get into Esav. But let's start with the joke now because it's a good one. So there's a governor, a big, powerful governor, hotshot, and he comes to visit this little Yehupitzville in the mountain. Like a little place in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. And he gets there and all the town is there in honor and respect for this, what's the word? Homage, however you pronounce that word, to the hotshot governor. And they're all there and the governor figures, here's his chance to make good on the people that they'll vote for him again. And so he goes to the mayor and, loud enough for everyone to hear, he says to the mayor, today's your lucky day. You tell me what your town needs and I will have it done. Your wish will be done, whatever you need. The mayor says, wonderful. There are two things that our town has issue with. It's beautiful. We have clear air. We have clean water. We have electricity. We have plumbing. We have all that. But there are two issues. First issue is we don't have a real doctor. We don't have a person who actually knows what they're doing with medicine. So the mayor said that the governor flips out his phone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, right here in this town in Yehupitzville, they need. Perfect. You will? Awesome. Okay, we got a place for you and everything. Done. Perfect. Hangs up the phone. He says it's done. One of the top doctors from my city is going to be here. We'll set up a house for him and everything will be fine. What's the other thing? So the mayor says the other issue is that we have no cell phone reception.
Oh. Dear. So.
Okay. So moving right along. So far, we have tonight is going to be the best. We saved the best for last. It is absolutely eye-opening, and I learned a lot from it. And in terms of growth, in terms of personal growth, it's an incredible lesson as well. Besides for the actual practical aspects, I'm going to turn the AC a little bit lower here and get to work. That's what I just did.
Hey, Rabbi, while you do that, when I have to go to the laundry, is it okay? I bring you with me? Yeah, I'll just turn off the sound.
Yeah, that'll be fine. That'll be fine. So we've spoken so far about the origins of anti-Semitism. We've spoken about the psychology of hate. We've spoken about the power of believing, the power of faith. We've spoken about the many different faces that anti-Semitism has morphed through to this day, and modern anti-Semitism. And today we are going to discuss the most important thing. What do we do when we're faced with anti-Semitism? How do we respond? There are so many different angles we could, like, when there's somebody who's saying anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic slurs, rhetoric, what do we do about it? Like, what actually are we supposed to do? So today we're going to have it's not going to be the only insight, it's not going to be the only way, but it will be a fascinating insight into an incredible option of what we can do and how we can respond. So it's arguably the most important class, and I'm going to start with two questions. First question is, please share, if you would, a personal account, a story that happened to you, with you, in front of you, of anti-Semitism.
I don't look Jewish, so I really haven't, and my maiden name was Italian, so I really didn't experience it.
Oh, wow. You never experienced any anti-Semitism?
Not that I can recall.
Okay, good. Auntie Nina?
Oh, a lot. In my youth, especially back in Europe, and especially back in when we were in a refugee camp in Austria on our way out from Hungary, and there were other refugee groups, and I had, stones throwing and stuff like that at us. But I had a very good moment. Everybody was running inside to the barracks, which was the Jewish quarters there, and the young boys from Yugoslavia were throwing stones at us as we were running in. And I stopped, and I turned back, and I just looked at them, and I didn't throw any stones at me.
Oh.
That is going to become so powerful. Wow. That is incredible.
Wow.
That is absolutely incredible. What did we speak about last week, about when we stand proud for who we are? Beautiful. Thank you, Auntie Nina. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Actual stones being thrown at you because you were Jewish.
Wow.
Wow.
But you made human contact, eye contact with them, and they could see you as a human, it sounds like.
Right. Like Moshe.
Yes.
I don't think it matters how you confront anti-Semitism, because if you talk facts, people don't want to hear facts. When they have a belief, the facts just anger them because they don't want to change their beliefs. So there's no way to talk to anti-Semites, just best to walk away from them.
Yeah.
Right. Was there a time that you experienced anti-Semitism?
Yes, when I was at Westchester, there was a fat psychopath there. This woman called me a Jew bastard, and I reported her to the administration, and I reported her to the Anti-Defamation League. But nothing was done.
Wow.
Okay. Next question that I'm going to ask is there a public figure, not a politician, because I like to stay clear of politics, is there a figure that you can think of that is known as an anti-Semite or that made anti-Semitic remarks?
Other than Hitler?
Hitler?
Henry Ford.
Henry Ford?
Yeah, right.
Oh, there's quite a lot in modern history.
Go ahead.
I mean, right now in our parliaments, there are actually they have quietened down, and every time before an election, that are very careful, and there's always elections going on. They're more careful these days.
Good. So the question is, what's the best way to respond to these things? That's what we're going to be discussing tonight. Where people are throwing stones, people are throwing slurs, people are being evil, and what's the best response? So this is not going to be the only approach, but it's going to be a beautiful and novel explanation. And it's something that is part of a multifaceted approach, but it's the part that perhaps we would not have thought of yet. Yes, there does come a time where it's time to put down our words and pick up our knives. There does come a time where we must call out people for what they are. Today, we're going to talk about something that could be, when used appropriately, could be far more powerful than guns, knives, and shaming. So we're going to start with the 1960s. The 1950s and 60s, France was selling war stuff, arms, and those kind of things to Israel. Charles de Gaulle was at that time the prime minister, president, whatever, the guy in charge of France. There's a airport named after him, CDG, in Paris. And they were selling all these kind of things to Israel. Israel had actually ordered and paid for 50 Mirage fighter jets. And then came the tensions leading up to the Six-Day War. At that point, the president declared an embargo, a sales embargo, stating that due to the tensions in Israel, he will not be supplying any arms to either side involved in the conflict. Okay. He decided no more sale, even though the Israelis had already paid for these planes. He said no more sales. Not going to happen. Not going to happen at all. Now, the first thing that we need to look at is, where was this coming from? The Israelis felt it as a direct front to them because the enemies weren't buying from France. The enemies were being supplied by Russia. The enemies were buying from Russia. The Syrians, the Iranians, they were buying from Russia. Israel was buying from France. This embargo only hurt Israel. It did not hurt the other side. It did not really affect the other side much at all. But that was that was France's official policy. Fast forward to 1970. 1970, this man called Pompidou. What was his first name again? Anyone remember? Sorry? George Pompidou. Thank you. So George Pompidou, George Pompidou decided that he is going to sell jets to Libya. 50 jets, like the same jets that Israel had paid for, he's now selling to Libya a few years later. So this enraged everyone. Let's read text number 1. Leib Moshe, would you read text number 1 for us, please? Page 116.
116. I was way off. Okay. Text 1. After much hesitation, French officials acknowledged tonight that about 50 Mirage jet fighter planes would be sold to Libya. The confirmation of the sale was expected to provoke sharp protests from Israel. The Israelis suspect that the planes will sooner or later find their way to the fighting fronts. The French Defense Ministry reaffirmed the French embargo policy of selling no arms to the countries directly in conflict: Israel, the United Arab Republic, Jordan, and Syria, and said they were convinced that Libya sought to supply her own forces. Israeli fears of the Libyan mirages is based on a conviction shared by some French experts that the Libyan Air Force in its present state could not absorb such numbers of a highly advanced plane. The fear is compounded by the aggressive stance taken toward Israel by the new revolutionary military regime. which has been in power in Libya since early September. The plane sold to Libya is believed to be the Mirage 3, the same type as the 50 built for Israel, but placed under embargo in 1967. The Israelis are expected to find particularly galling the fact that they have been denied about the same number of planes now made available to a hostile Arab country.
Okay. The truth is that the Times was wrong. The sale ended up including 110 Mirage jets, more than double the number that the Libyan Air Force was not able to handle. Okay, so here we have pretty clear where they're not selling to Israel. They are not going to sell to Israel, but they will sell to Israel's enemies and uphold their official statement that we don't sell to either side. So, well, let's say it's 1970 and you're reading this and you're there and you're part of this. What are your feelings towards this Mr. Pompidou?
Anger and frustration.
Outrage, anger. Here he is going on double standards. He's lying to the world.
They were
Outright
hypocrites.
hatred of Israel.
That's right.
You wanted to say something else?
No.
Okay. So how would we respond? How would you respond?
I'd thumb. But there's a very rude sign in Hungarian where you put your thumb up.
Yeah. We would.
What else
we
can
would
you do?
scream at him, protest him, wave our fists angrily in the air at him, curse him, protest, demonstrate.
What they should have done is waited until the planes were delivered and then bombed them.
Okay.
Yes.
They couldn't fly them anyway.
I don't know why I didn't think of this one before. There was with these jets, so the Libyan Air Force, so they the French, sorry, sent along some technicians to show the Libyans how to fly these new advanced planes. So they're showing them, this is how you go, the simulation, this is how you go up, this is how you go down, this is right, left, dropping bombs, you know, the whole thing. So it's a 45-minute lecture. At the end of the lecture, one of the pilots says, so you've explained to us how takeoff works, refueling, mid-air refueling, all these things, a full day lecture, you know, but you haven't taught us how to go down. So the man says, don't worry, that the Israelis will take care of.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. And the truth is, some of you may remember this. What actually happened, let's look over here at
You mean the surprise grade? Oh.
So now what actually we should do, we're gonna wait now till the towards the end of the class. We're gonna get back to this, but this is the purpose of these two exercises that we did so far is to frame our minds when we're opposed with when we're faced with opposition, when we're faced with blatant anti-Semitism. Our natural go-to response is to let out some heat. Show him who's boss. Teach him a lesson. We're not cowards. You can't get away with such horrific, insensitive policies and actions. And we're going to see an incredibly novel approach that the Rebbe took at that time, actually. So we're going to come back to that. But the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to the first, many, many years ago. It's back in the Torah in last week's Parsha, where we have the story of Yaakov and Esav. So Esav, some background for the context. Esav was supposed to be blessed by Yitzchak, their father. Yitzchak said, I'm going to give you a blessing before I die. Yaakov's mother, Rivka, says, hey, that's not right. Esav's not going to do good with the blessings. It's not going to be good for him. So we're going to give Yaakov blessings. So they figure it out, and Yaakov gets in there, and Yaakov gets the blessings. As Yaakov is leaving the tent, Esav comes in. And Esav says, Dad, give me the blessings. And his father said, wait, who did I just give the blessings to? And Esav realized that Yaakov had gotten the blessings. And he was incredibly angry. And he made a vow that at the earliest convenience, he will kill his brother. Rivka, the mother of the two, found out and said to Yaakov, it's time you leave home. Go until your brother calms down a little bit. So he goes off. He spends 14 years in yeshiva. He spends 20 years working by his father-in-law. And now it's 34 years later. He's on his way back to his parents. It's 34 years later. He's hoping that his brother has been working on himself the same way Jacob has been working on himself. And he's going on his way home, anticipating an interception from Esav, but understanding that he's got to meet him. On his way, he sends some messengers to find out where is Esav standing in his frame of mind. And the messengers come back with some very unnerving news. And they tell him, actually, Esav is on his way towards you with 400 soldiers, 400 armed men. That's the context over here. Yaakov has this Esav, his brother, who is trying to kill him, and is on his way with 400 armed men. Yaakov is a yeshiva boy. What does he know about war? And in fact, the pasuk says, "Vayetzer lo." He was very, very afraid. He was very nervous about the situation. Here was his brother on his way with an army to kill him. So what did he do? The Medrash tells us that he prepared himself for three things. Leib Moshe, text number 2, please. What were the 3 steps? What was the 3-pronged approach that he prepared for?
A prayer, a gift, and armed struggle.
Very good. Jacob prepared himself for 3 things. Number 1, he prayed. He davened to Hashem and he asked Hashem to deliver him. He asked Hashem to make good on the promise that he would be safe and saved. Number 2, he got together many animals. There were actually 550 animals. And he sent them in various waves, a little bit at a time, to, to build it up, the suspense by his brother, and sent a few animals at a time, a few animals and a few animals and a few animals. And every time, there was a submissive script that Yaakov told these messengers who were bringing the shepherds, who were bringing these animals. There was a very submissive script that was to come along with it. So when Esav is going to see you and is going to ask you, what are these animals? You're going to tell him it is a present sent to you by your brother, your servant, Yaakov, who has sent you this gift, asking for you to find grace and favor in his master's eyes, and your servant is behind us and he's following along. It was a bribe, essentially, appeasement, butter up, trying to get on the good side of Esav, sending him gifts, sending him presents. And the third thing was he was preparing himself that in worst comes to worst, he will fight. So why did he do this? He did this because of what we learned in lesson 1. We learned that Hashem wants to give us miracles, but he needs an alibi. Hashem needs something natural for the miracle to come through. So he davened, and sometimes the answer is no. And therefore, he prepared himself for war in case the answer is going to be no. And he prepared himself for a gift in case the answer is yes, that the miracle should have some kind of natural way to unfold. That's what he did. Okay. Now, let's ask, what do you think Yaakov was feeling as he was sending these gifts? The truth is that as he actually approached Esav, he bowed down 7 times. He prostrated himself before Esav. His wife and his kids also did. They bowed down, submitting themselves to Esau. What do you think was going? Do you think Yaakov was happy about this whole situation? Sending gifts to this evil, wicked man who's trying to kill him, bowing down to him. What do you think?
Not at all.
One
No,
could
of
imagine
course.
that he would have been seething inside. This guy is trying to kill me and I'm sending him gifts. And he knew that he is not going to ever change his brother. But guess what happened? Esav loved the gifts. Joan, are you in front of your book?
No, I'm in the laundry room, but
Okay.
I'm listening.
Leib Moshe, text number 3, please.
Esau ran toward Jacob and embraced him. He fell on Jacob's neck and kissed him, and they wept.
Aw.
Okay. So it worked. It worked.
Perhaps Jacob was not seething. Perhaps he was being strategic, and he was being smart and keeping himself emotionally detached from the situation so that his strategy could be put into play.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good.
A good answer.
Perhaps, but as he was planning his strategy, he was probably not too happy about it. Or, you know what? Let's not speak for him, but let's speak for ourselves. And the reason why I brought that up is because it's the natural way of responding would be to
Be
be
feeling
angry
upset.
and to want to fight him. He's coming and he wants to kill me. I'm going to show him. But that wasn't Yaakov's response. Yaakov's response was, I'm going to send him gifts. I'm going to butter him up, and we'll see what happens. And guess what happened? What happened was, like Leib Moshe said, it was a very strategic and not the natural way we would usually respond to such a situation. You know, road rage.
Right.
Someone cuts you off. What do? You honk at them a long beat. The nerve to cut me off.
And in South Florida, they shoot at you.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
So Esav kissed him. Now, this kiss was not, he didn't all of a sudden with a gift win over Esav's heart. He didn't all of a sudden gain an ally. Leib Moshe, if you could read for us text number 4.
The Torah features dots over the words "and kissed him." This is because Esau did not kiss Jacob wholeheartedly.
I'm going to pause you for a moment over here. The Torah actually has no vowels, no cantillation marks. Leib Moshe remembers this probably from his bar mitzvah. It's just the letters. And it takes a lot of practice to memorize how the words are supposed to sound. Very rarely are there dots in the Torah. And whenever there's a dot on top of the word, it's to teach us that something here is not exactly the way that it seems. So there are 2 explanations that we are going to delve into. There are many more explanations on the dots of these words, but there's something deeper. There's something not really so sincere about these dots. So Leib Moshe, please read for us. What does that say?
Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, "It is an established fact that Esau hates Jacob. Nevertheless, his compassion was moved at that time, and he kissed him wholeheartedly."
Okay, so we have here two explanations. The first one is that the dots are there because Esav kissed him, but he didn't really mean it. The second one is Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and we're going to learn soon why this is so important that it was Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai who said this. But Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says no, he's evil, and he says halacha is an established fact. It is a law that Esav hates Yaakov to this very day. But at that time, it's possible for a hater like Esav to be consumed and overwhelmed with compassion and really mean a kiss. We're going to get into that in a moment. Auntie Nina, you were trying to show something?
Yes, I was just going to ask you if you were going to talk about later about what Rivka said to Yaakov when he said, "When can I come back? How will I know when he will stop hating me?"
And what did she say?
Until your brother's anger turns away from you. So this says you will know it from yourself When you feel that your heart is free from any anger with your brother for all the trouble he had caused you, then you will be sure that your brother's anger has turned away from you.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. That is very
Well,
powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
I
Could
carry it
you
around
say
with
it
me.
again?
Wow. When you will no longer feel any negative feelings towards him, you will
Yes.
know that he has no negative feelings towards you, and his anger is, I guess, well, with him, his anger is directed elsewhere, but his anger is no longer directed at you. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mm.
I will talk to you later, Joan, where I got this from. It's from the Torah, but there's a whole story. It's a book called The Storyteller,
Okay.
Volume 1. I carry this bit of paper around with me everywhere.
Okay.
Wow.
I need help with it. I
Okay.
could use, yeah, I could use
Perfect.
that for somebody who's got a problem with me. So now I see I'm being negative and I have to stop it.
Okay.
You read this
Okay.
one, and you.
So let's continue over here. So let's look at Yaakov. Yaakov was not looking at how is Esav making me feel. Yaakov was looking at, what do I need over here? What do I need? What I need is peaceful passage for me and my family. That's what I need. If I'm going to start waging war, that's not going to be the best way to achieve the outcome I'm looking for. The best way for me to get what I'm looking for is to butter him up. So did he teach Esav a lesson about hating Jews? Not at all. Did he get what he wanted? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And if he would have lost sight of the war, he may have started a battle, but it would not have helped him, because that wasn't what he needed. That's not what he wanted. He got everything that he needed from a man who hated him, who was on his way to wage war against him with 400 soldiers. A man who had tried to kill him already before. A man who never stopped hating him. But he was able to he was able to get by safely. Imagine he would have showed up with a war. He would have heard, oh, Esav is coming towards you with 400 men, and he would have started sharpening some sticks and stones. Let's not think how that might have ended up. Even if he would have won because of God's miracles, what does that do for him? The amount of time, the struggle, the resources, the energy.
And
it ended up being, like Moshe said, much more strategic and much smarter to do the thing that was probably hardest and send gifts, butter him up, be even submissive to this wicked man, and move past safely.
One thing different here between this particular grievance between Esau and Jacob and anti-Semitism is Esau's animosity towards Jacob was based on a real and specific grievance. Where with anti-Semitism, as we've seen, it's based on like the whims of the time. It's religion, or it's science, or it's human rights. But there's no specific grievance.
Thank you for that. That's a great comparison, and it's a great comparison. And I think that brings out the point even stronger, that even if there's a real reason, and someone who hates you for a good reason, still diplomacy can be effective.
I've got my hand up, but you could say that it wasn't a real reason, because he had sold his birthright. He was careless. He didn't deserve his, he didn't treasure his birthright. So it wasn't his. He gave it away. He sold it.
True. That's he was angry also that he sold it. It was, but yes, that is correct. It was a grievance over a true story, which was not necessarily his to get angry about. Thank you for bringing that up, Antonina, that he had sold his birthright and therefore Yaakov actually was the one who should have got the blessings. So how do we translate this? What are we supposed to do with this? And the fact of the matter is, if we looked at text number 5, we're going to see from Nachmanides, from the Ramban. He says that this template is what we in old generations should be looking back to. I'm going to read this over here, text number 5, page 121. The Medrash relates that when Rabbi Yanai, who was Rabbi Yanai? Rabbi Yanai lived in the beginning of the 3rd century. And he was a student of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and he was a great rabbi. And he often had to meet with the Roman government on matters pertaining to the Jews. And when he would set out for a meeting with the Roman government, he would first read this passage in the Torah about Yaakov and Esav. The sages had a tradition that this passage was a guide for our exile. Therefore, when Rabbi Yanai would visit the rulers of Rome for communal issues, he would consult this passage to follow the advice of the wise Jacob. It is indeed appropriate for all generations to study his approach and adopt it in actual practice. Okay. So here we have from Nachmanides, here we have a Rabbi Yanai who did the same thing and prepared himself the same way. And we're going to go through a few examples here of how Jewish people took this in their own generations, in their own times, and how it proved to be successful for them. So we're going to bring a few cases over here, a few stories, and we're going to see how diplomacy worked for them. First is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, are we familiar with Lag BaOmer, the bonfires? So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had a very complicated relationship with the Romans. On the one hand, he was chased for his life, and he had to hide from the Romans, and they tried to kill him. And for 13 years, he was hiding in a cave, refugee from the government. At the same time, he was also sent to the government for communal issues, as we're going to see shortly. So he, in the beginning, when the Roman emperor who was trying to kill him died, so he came back to his town, and he was sent on many communal missions. There came a time where Rabbi Shimon. Now remember, this is the same Rabbi Shimon who believed that, who we said before, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Halacha hi biyadua she'esav soin el Yaakov. It is an established fact that the goyim hate us. And there was once a mission where the Romans had decided to outlaw the observance of Shabbos, the observance of family purity, and the observance of circumcision. So the first thing that happened is that there was a certain man whose name was Rabbi Reuven, and he infiltrated into the government, and he dressed up as an official, and he ended up getting a high place in the government. And he spoke to the emperor, and he reasoned with him. And he said, Mr. Emperor, or Your Highness, or however he related to him, and he says, it makes no sense. Why don't you want them to stop these 3 things? Why do you want them to stop these 3 things? He says, if they circumcise their children, they will be weaker. If they stop from if when their wife is considered a nida, then they're not together, so then they're observing the laws of family purity, they're going to have less children. And if they take 1 day of work off every week, then they are going to be less rich. So they're going to have less children, smaller families, weaker people, poorer people. Let them keep with their observances. It's good for us. And the Roman emperor was won over, and he agreed to these ideas, and he actually withdrew the decree. And that worked for some time until they found out that this man was a Jew and that he had been fooled. And at that point, he reinstated this decree. So, text number 6, Rabbi Shimon goes to Rome. The Roman government once issued a decree that Jews may not observe Shabbos, circumcision, and family purity. The Jews said to themselves, who should go to Rome to solicit annulment of the decree? Let Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai go, for he is experienced in miracles. Okay. So he, Rabbi Shimon, who again, as we know, was severely hated by the Roman government, and they actually tried to kill him. And for 13 years, he was hiding in a cave. He agreed to go to the Roman government to plead the case. And he ended up convincing the Roman government. It was a whole crazy story where the emperor's daughter went crazy, and nobody could heal her, and Rabbi Shimon healed her. And so the Roman emperor said, you could do, I'll give you whatever you want as a gift. And he said, I want the paper that the decree was signed on, and he ripped it up, and that was the end of the decree. So here we're talking about someone who believes that the Roman government hates the Jewish people with a passion and will never wholeheartedly become lovers of the Jews. They have issued a decree. They have tried to kill him in the past. They have issued a decree against circumcision, Shabbat, and family purity. Yet at the same time, he believed that diplomacy could work. And he went and he spoke to them, and it did work. Sorry?
All it took was a miracle.
All it took was a miracle. Yeah, all it took was a miracle. So he still believed that he could persuade. So this is the big idea here. The big idea of tonight is that even if there's someone who is extremely hateful and murderous towards Jewish people, it doesn't mean that we can't try diplomacy. And if we go with big smear campaigns and revolts, we end up cutting off all chances of that happening. What happened with the Bar Kokhba revolt? What happened in the times when the Zealots in Jerusalem, the Zealots started war with the Romans, and it ended up very bad, very, very bad for the Jewish people. I'm not saying that it's never a good idea to start a war. One question that I always have, I don't know the answer to this. One question that I always had is the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. If we learn that Jewish people are always into diplomacy, and the voice is the voice of Jacob and the hands are the hands of Esav, and that's what my grandmother told my grandfather. My grandfather was a chaplain in the Hungarian army, and he was quicker than anyone else at taking apart his gun, cleaning it, and putting it back together. And when they got married, my grandmother, is that true, Auntie Nina? That my grandmother told my grandfather, Hakol kol Yaakov hayadayim midei Esav, the voice is the voice of Jacob, hands are the hands of Esav, and that gun is not coming anywhere near my house.
Exactly. Yes, I remember that. Being told that. I remember being told that Omama said, yeah.
So, but I don't believe that the notion of fighting for safety is wrong on all accounts. I think that there does come a time. The Rebbe was very strong proponent of the Israeli army defending Jewish lives, and he going on the offense to defend Jewish lives. And when they were going through in what was it in the north? Is that Lebanon, where the Rebbe pushed them? He said, "Go to Beirut, Damascus," and the Rebbe wanted them to continue and to march on and to keep Beirut. The Israeli soldiers, they went into Beirut, went into Damascus, they held down the fortress there, and the Rebbe was very for that. And then the next day they gave it back. But there's a story, they say, and I haven't verified it, but apparently there were pogroms and the such like in the Rebbe's hometown when he was a young child. And apparently at 16 years old, he was the head of the security team over there, and he owned a rifle. That's what they say. So it's not the only way. Diplomacy is definitely not the only way. And sometimes we need to pick up arms and figure things out. But the big idea over here is that very often with diplomacy, quiet buttering, we can get much further. Because when we openly smear and openly go against our enemies, we push them even further. That's the big idea. That's the big idea. Any questions thus far? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say the idea of the Rodef, the pursuer. You can have a preemptive, like you're allowed to, excuse me, you're even allowed to have, according to halakha, is this correct? You can have a preemptive war, which did happen recently, in the last century. You can have a preemptive war. If it's someone coming out to kill you, you're allowed to go and kill him first.
Right. So let's keep going. The next set of examples is from the Jews in Europe. In Europe, the Jewish people were very oppressed, and they were chased from land to land. There was we're talking the example that we're going to give now was in a time, the early 1500s, where the Jews were not allowed to be for a long period of time seen anywhere in Belgium and Holland. The Jews were expelled. We know the Spanish Inquisition, the British expulsion. The Jews did not have it easy. So there were, in every city or every municipality, there was a person who was appointed who was called a Stadlan, which is from the word hishtadlut, which means to try, to work, to get things done. And their job, you may have heard the term a court Jew. Their job was to go and speak to the officials on behalf of the Jewish people. One such person, his name was Rabbi Yosef of Rosheim. Yosef of Rosheim was, he lived again in the end of the 1400s, beginning of the 1500s. And he was once commissioned by the Jews. He was once commissioned by the Jews to go and speak with the king. He had spoken, the people that he was in touch with were King Maximilian I and his grandson Charles V. Who was this Charles V? This Charles V was a grandson of Maximilian I, obviously. And on his other side, he was a grandson of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Recognize the names?
Yes, the anti-Semitic rulers of Spain.
Very good. The anti-Semitic rulers of Spain who expelled the Jews and burned them and killed them. They started the Inquisition. So this guy, Charles V, that we're going to be talking about, was no lover of the Jews.
They didn't start the Inquisition. That was done by
Torquemada.
By Torquemada, but they enabled it and allowed it.
Right. Thank you for that correction. The expulsion in 1492 on the 9th of Av. So he was a grandson of Ferdinand and Isabella, and he was no friend of the Jews. And let's read. I'm going to read this text number 7, and this is from a historical account of Rabbi Yosef of Rosheim. We don't have all of the everything written, but this is from his diary. In 1531, so this is 40 years after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, during the high time of the Inquisition. Now, important to note is that this Charles V, who was the Holy Roman Emperor, he was the ruler over the entire Europe pretty much. He was also the King of Spain. He was the King of Spain under whose rule Jews were being burned, beaten, and tortured. And this is while everything is going on. In 1531, the denouncers, it's unclear who we're talking about or what they were trying to do, but they were trying to do something bad. Once again hounded the Emperor Charles V while he was in Belgium and Holland, lands uninhabited by Jews. Many requested that I travel to those lands to oppose the accusers with the help of God. I was at the court of the exalted emperor for 4 months. It's a long time. And we're talking in a place where no Jews were allowed to set foot. He was risking his life for 4 months from the 1st of Adar until the 1st of Sivan, pursuing the interests of the Jewish community. He was allowed to be as long as he wanted with the emperor. Now, although Rothroyd, it's unclear who he was. Some say it was a certain mercenary whose name was Martin van Rossum. We're not sure exactly who it is. Although Rothroyd attempted to swallow me alive and to bring about my demise, God in his great mercy sent his messenger and saved me from his hands and from all those who sought to harm me. At that time, I had an audience with the emperor in his private chamber. I spoke to him for as long as I needed, and he responded sympathetically. During this period, when I had free time and was secluded in my room, he wasn't able to go anywhere. He couldn't go take a snack you couldn't go down the street, do any sightseeing. He would not have made it back to his room. Right? When I had free time and was secluded in my room, I authored a book entitled The Sanctified Path. So let's think about this for a moment. Rabbi Yosef of Roshan is going to speak to a man who is overseeing one of the greatest atrocities against the human being, against the Jewish nation of all times. He's going to speak to the king under whose watch the Inquisition is, the inquisitors are torturing and burning Jewish families. And he goes, and through diplomacy, is able to have the desired effect on the king. Isn't that incredible? He goes to speak. The fact that he even was willing to go and speak to this man, I would never have done it. He's a man who's responsible for the murder and torture of thousands of Jewish families, and I'm going to go to talk to him and try to make better the situation of the Jews in other countries? Sounds very far-fetched, but no. Rabbi Yosef of Rosheim went and was successful. Now, this is not the only way. This is not the only way. However successful these journeys were and these missions were, it's important to note that not always were they met with success. And as is seen very clearly by the Inquisition itself, Don Yitzchak Abarbanel was a wealthy Spanish Jew, influential, and he had 3 separate meetings with the king to convince the king to let the Jews to stay. And he did not. He ended up filing for the expulsion of the Jewish people. And there are different stories as to what actually happened. Some say that his wife Isabella said, "Don't listen to the Jews." Others say that it was Torquemada who came in. The legend has it that Torquemada came in, and we don't know this for a fact, but that's what the legend says, that Torquemada burst in the middle of the meeting and said Judas sold him, talking about Yashka, for 30 silver coins, and you want to sell him again? In other words, don't give up the church for anything, and the Jews have to leave. So sometimes it didn't always work, but we definitely see that oftentimes, instead of war, we can be diplomatic. Now, like Moshe said, it's important to remember that this is not a weakness. It's not a weakness to go there and bow our heads to the emperors and to the Asavs of the world. It's strategic. It's smart. And it actually takes a lot more strength than rallying up our all of our emotions and going ahead to wage war. It's a lot harder. It's not weak, it's strategy. And the premise of all of these stories, we've shared a bunch of stories about how people who were evil and were won over by influence. The premise is predicated on the belief that people are complicated. Human beings are very, very, very complicated. We have so many different parts of our brain, so many different parts of our heart, and we're complicated. It's very rare to find a person who is only evil. Very rare. So we're going to look at some texts over here. We don't have to agree with the bottom line sentiments. This is a book written all about Mel Gibson. We may remember the story. Mel Gibson was taken in a taxi or something, and the taxi driver was Jewish. Or no, he was arrested while he was drunk, and the cop was Jewish, and he made some comments, unkind comments towards the cop, and he never apologized. It was a long story. So we're going to look at this book, and we don't have to take the conclusion if we don't want to, but let's look at the experience, and what's shared over here is absolutely very interesting by Mr. David Eagleman. Sounds like a Jewish name. Text number 8. Brains are like representative democracies. They are built of multiple overlapping experts who weigh in and compete over different choices. There is an ongoing conversation among the different factions in your brain, each competing to control the single output channel of your behavior. When the hostess at a party offers chocolate cake, you find yourself on the horns of a dilemma. Some parts of your brain have evolved to crave the rich energy source of the sugar. Other parts care about the negative consequences, such as the health of your heart. Part of you wants the cake, and part of you tries to muster the fortitude to forgo it. The final vote of the parliament determines which party controls your action, that is, whether you put your hand up or out. As the French essayist Michel de Montaigne, I don't know how you pronounce her name.
Montaigne.
She was one of the, sorry?
Montaigne.
Montaigne, thank you. I put it, and I love this line, there is as much difference between us and ourselves as there is between us and others. Again, there is as much difference between us and ourselves as there is between us and others. There are so many parts of our brain, and the part of us, we can have different feelings towards people that we know ourselves. And we have probably experienced this in the past, where we can have a love-hate relate. There can be a person that we think highly of and still hate certain parts of them. We can say mean things to someone and still care for them. And that's why it works. That's why it works. Because even though they may hate us as Jews, they're still human. And it's still often possible to work out a deal for our safety and to get the outcome that we're looking for. So over here, basically, his the way he responded to Mel Gibson is returning to Mel Gibson and his drunken tirade. We can ask whether there is such a thing as true colors. We have seen that this behavior is the outcome of the battle among internal systems. To be clear, I'm not defending Gibson's despicable behavior, but I am saying that a team of rivals' brain can naturally harbor both racist and non-racist feelings. Alcohol is not a truth serum. Instead, it tends to tip the battle towards the short-term, unreflective faction, which has no more or less claim than any other faction to be the true one. Okay. So, going back to our stories, if Yaakov, if Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, if Rabbi Yosef of Rashaim would have written off their enemies as evil people who cannot be reckoned with and we must fight, there's no knowing what the outcome would have looked like. But because they believed to a certain degree in humanity, and they believe that human beings are human beings, complicated creatures, and if we appeal to the positive, to the good, to the helpful side, a lot can be done, and we can get the outcomes that we need. So you'll have a lot of people. You'll have a lot of people who will look back at history and look back at Jacob, Yaakov, and look back at these stories and say that was necessary then, but not now. Now we have our own country. We have our own army. We have our own social media accounts. We are strong. We are strong. And now is the time to wage war against our enemies. Many people will say that today the way to deal with anti-Semites is to cancel them. Cancel, 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 cancel. Shame, smear, and cancel. Pressure them, make them leave their jobs. Let's look at the way the Rebbe responded to the story of Pompidou, and we're going to share one other story as well. So Pompidou, we're going to go back to the story. He sold 110 planes to Libya while on an embargo with Israel. He sold planes to the enemy while upkeeping the embargo with Israel. He visits America. I don't know if any of you remember his visit to America. The Americans were very excited, and they demonstrated and they planned, and we're going to show him who's boss. We're going to show you the Jews aren't cowards. We're not just going to let you do that. Such unfair, unjust, anti-Semitic, horrible, horrible atrocities and get away with it? No, we're going to demonstrate, and we're going to wave our hands and our fists, and we're going to let him taste some of the soup that he cooked for himself. So that's what happened. And the American Jewry all thought that this was absolutely incredible and strong display of Jewish pride. let's read text number 9 over here. What happened? Text number 9. Joan, would you like to read text number 9 for us? That's I'm going to ask you to unmute over here. We can't hear you. Are you able to unmute? There we go. Okay, go ahead. Text number 9, please.
President Nixon made a hurried trip to New York yesterday to apologize to President Pompidou, who was angered by what he termed insults to himself and his wife during pro-Israeli demonstrations touched off by a state visit to the United States. The French president had been angered by a jostling that members of his party received from demonstrations in Chicago, whose actions were marked by boos and angry cries, and by what he viewed as acceptance of such hostile acts by the Chicago police.
So the first thing we see is that he got very insulted by this, and he was definitely playing it up. I mean, a demonstration is a demonstration, but he was very insulted and getting all angry and playing victim. But he was angry. He was insulted, and President Nixon had to fly to New York to placate him. A Jewish man living in Moscow applies to move to Israel. 3 o'clock in the morning, there's banging on his door. The KGB barges in. And the man says, "You Jew, you applied to move to Israel?" "Yeah." "Here in Russia, do you have food to eat?" "Yeah." "Do you have a job?" "Yeah, I can't complain." "Do your wife and kids have food to eat?" "Yeah, can't complain." Your wife and kids have clothes?" "Yeah, can't complain." "You have a house to live in?" "Yeah, can't complain." "So why do you want to move to Israel?" "Because there I'm allowed to complain." Okay. So let's look over here at the Rebbe's response. Absolutely mind-blowing. And let's look at what the Rebbe has to say about this method. Text number 10a. At what cost? This is the Rebbe in a public talk addressed the protests against Pompidou. The public protests against the president of France angered French officials. This blocked any lobbying efforts that French Jews might have been able to make to prevent or at least reduce French assistance to Arab countries that are hostile to Israel. Wow. The stated reason for these protests was to demonstrate that America is a democratic country and that American Jews are not cowardly. The Rebbe says this is a worthwhile objective and quantifies it when Jewish lives are not at risk. However, when Jews are threatened with the sale of many military jets to Libya, we have two options. We can organize public protests, or we can make every effort to either prevent or postpone the sale, reduce the number of jets sold, or at least to prevail upon the French to send less effective planes. Such aims can only be achieved through quiet diplomacy. The proof is that agreements of this nature have been reached in the past. And the Rebbe didn't explain what he meant until a year later. A year later, in a talk, the Rebbe addressed this again and spoke up again about the matter. When Mr. Pompidou visited the United States, there were mass protests against him intended to intimidate France. This effort backfired. It can now be said that despite the French embargo against selling arms, meaning now we're allowed to say it, that despite the French embargo against selling arms to belligerents in the Middle East, the French president had allowed the sale of small arms and light weapons to Israel. Ooh. Items that can be sold without attracting publicity. During the embargo, President Pompidou was supplying Israel with arms. However, as a result of the demonstrations, the approval for such sales was withdrawn. After some time, when he was no longer being disparaged, he resumed dealing with Jews behind closed doors and reinstituted the small arms sales. He also arranged for 300 Jews to be able to leave Egypt. All of this was accomplished without demonstrations and without publicity. The Jewish media was warned against disclosing any of this, and we only know of this from the Gentile press. The conclusion we must draw from this case is that we do not influence anti-Semites by constantly yelling at them, "You are an anti-Semite, you are a thief, you are a murderer." Rather, engage them in diplomatic conversation. Although such individuals are well aware of what we think about them, listen to this line again. Although such individuals are well aware of what we think about them, they are nevertheless human beings and wish to behave like human beings. Wow. 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 The Rebbe's take on this is that so much can be done with quiet democracy. And by screaming and yelling
Quiet
and
diplomacy.
protesting, we can really sever a relationship. Yes,
Same
Moshe.
thing. Same
No, you
thing,
said
Moshe.
quiet democracy. You meant quiet diplomacy.
It's the same thing. Almost.
No, it really isn't.
Well,
Say again?
You
I'm
had
not
said
sure.
it was a result of quiet democracy, and I said what you meant is quiet diplomacy.
Yes, quiet diplomacy. Thank you. Quiet diplomacy. Yes. So we see over here where another example of where diplomacy and working behind the scenes was effective, and the screaming and shouting and demonstrations, the smear campaigns, ended up actually hurting Jewish lives and backfiring.
It's also the understanding of human psychology. Pompidou didn't want to be embarrassed on the world stage, and he took that as a personal affront. And when we allowed things to calm down and simmer down, they were able to return to the small things that the French were doing to benefit Israel, like the sale of small arms.
Right. And we see also from here, like Moshe is saying, humans are humans, psychology is psychology. And people have a soft spot. People have and they're willing to help, even people who publicly, for whatever reason, they are making negative, what's the word? It'll come to me. Proclamations and decisions. So there's one more story we're going to share. Anyone remember Senator Jesse Helms, North Carolina?
Yes.
Big anti-Semite, anti-Israel for many years, anti-Israel. He was against everything, against foreign aid. He introduced bills to stop foreign aid to Israel. It was very anti-Israel.
Klan.
Sorry?
He was a former member of the Ku Klux Klan.
I did not know that. Okay, thank you. So we have here a person with very not, his background does not align with the kind of background we would see from a supporter of the Jews or a supporter of Israel. Now, in 1984, the President Ronald Reagan signed on the 11th day of Nisan, which is the Rebbe's birthday, signed a declaration declaring the Rebbe's birthday as Education Day USA. Because of the Rebbe's call for education for everyone, Jews and non-Jews, and for the Rebbe's work in education, they honored the Rebbe's birthday as Education Day USA. And actually, since then, every single year, every president has marked the 11th day of the month of Nisan as Education Day USA. Now, in 1984, this was the first time it was done, and Chabad in Washington threw a party celebrating this milestone event. And it was open to all of the politicians, or I guess a certain group of politicians. Mr. Jesse Helms, Senator Jesse Helms, joined that event. He was there. He was there. He was there, and anyone here heard of Alan Dershowitz? Alan Dershowitz got wind that Senator Jesse Helms had taken part in this event, and he was mad. He was very upset. He sent a letter to the Rebbe asking, how is it possible that Chabad is honoring Jesse Helms, this man who is such a hater of the Jews? So here's what happened. Let's read text number 11. And this is what the Rebbe says. One second. Here. So the Rebbe responds, first of all, that this event was not honoring Senator Helms, but actually Senator Helms came to honor Chabad. and Senator Helms came to honor and pay tribute to Chabad's commitment to education. This was an event about Chabad, and Jesse Helms came to show support. So this is not us celebrating him, this is him celebrating us. So first of all, that was his response to Mr. Dershowitz. We were not there to honor him. And then the Rebbe adds a PS, and like classic Rebbe move, this PS is the bomb. Let's read text number 11, the PS, the postscript to the letter. I trust that you will agree that in regard to persons of influence, whether in Washington or elsewhere, the first objective should be to persuade and encourage such a person to use his influence in a positive way in behalf of any and all good causes which are important to us. We should welcome every public appearance which lends public support to the cause, especially when there is a likelihood that it may be the forerunner of similar pronouncements in the future. My experience with such people, though I have never personally met the said person, has convinced me that politicians are generally motivated more by expediency than by conviction. Let's read that again. Politicians are generally motivated more by expediency than by conviction. In other words, their public pronouncements on various issues do not stem from categorical principles or religious imperatives. Hence, most of them, if not all, are subject to change their positions depending on time, place, and other factors. I believe, therefore, that the proper approach to such persons by Jewish leaders should not be rigid. As a rule, it does no good to engage in a cold war, which may often turn into a hot war, nor does it serve any useful purpose to brand one as an enemy or an anti-Semite, however tempting it is to do so. Even if that person vehemently denies it, it can only be counterproductive. On the contrary, ways and means should be found to persuade such a person to take a favorable stance, at least publicly. Even if he remains an anti-Semite, at least he can make good decisions for us. We haven't too many friends, and attaching labels, etc., will not gain us any. Instances abound where the approach advocated above produced good results. There is surely no need to point out to you that responsible Jewish leaders consistently cultivated good public relations, indeed even cordial relations, with President Carter and his predecessors going back to President Roosevelt, regardless of their sometimes openly negative feelings towards Jews and Jewish causes. Boom. The Rebbe said very clearly what we've been discussing so far. And Professor Alan Dershowitz mentioned in a story a few years back when he was recounting the story, and he added a postscript of his own. Surely enough, very shortly after he was honored, Senator Helms assumed a very influential role on the United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee and became one of the strongest supporters of Israel and of other Jewish causes as well. So obviously, the Rebbe had an enormous influence on persuading Jesse Helms that even with his very conservative values, he could become a beacon for the Jewish people and the Jewish state. So was it exactly from that meeting or not? We don't know. We can't know. But what we do know is that he changed his ways. He came around. And had we engaged in a Cold War, had we engaged in a smear campaign against Jesse Helms, chances are he would never have come around in that way. So there's a story. The sun and the wind were trying to get a man to take off his jacket. The sun and the wind were trying to get this man to take off his jacket. And the wind said, you see, I'm going to get his jacket off. And he blew and he blew and he blew and he tried blowing the jacket, and the jacket starts coming off. And the man clutches the jacket closer and zips it up and holds it tight and snuggles to himself. And the sun said, just watch how it's done. And the sun beat down strongly, shedding light and warmth. And the man took off his jacket. Sometimes when we find people clutch on to whatever it is that's protecting them. But when we shine light, when we shine love, when we shine warmth, it can fade away. So smearing campaigns will break ties that we have and kind of kill any potential for a relationship. So what have we spoken about tonight? Where have we come? We've discussed that calling out the Aesopes of the world feels very good. Feels very good, but it might not help. It might not help. So again, this is not the only way to deal with anti-Semites. However, it is a novel idea that we may not have thought of. It is not intuitive, but it is very effective very often. So there are three things that I want to take away from tonight. Number one is when it comes to politicians, to public officials, and to public people, not to be so quick to shame them, but to try to win them over and persuade them with gentle conversation. Number two, in our own private lives, when we encounter people who are anti-Semitic, and just to have, instead of getting angry at them, to have a sweet conversation, explain to them why what they're saying is offensive. And number three, a realization that human beings are not static. And while a person can say something or do something extremely hurtful and anti-Semitic, it does not mean that there is no hope for them to turn around. And it does not mean that there is no room in their heart for us. Final point, let's go back to the Purim story. Every lesson so far, we've gone back to the Purim story. What did Haman tell Achashverosh? Haman said, there is a nation that is dispersed and disbanded among your nations. What he meant to say was that the Jews are all spread out everywhere. They have no place, and they just find themselves wherever they find themselves. But there is something deeper. Haman was telling Achashverosh, Haman was telling the king that internally the Jews are fragmented. And if the Jewish people are infighting, there's no way they stand a chance. We all remember maybe the story of the man who was on his deathbed. He had 10 kids. He told them each to go bring a twig and bring it in. He took the 10 twigs and tied them together with a little string. And he passed it to the oldest son and he said, break the bundle. He tried, and he couldn't. He passed it around to all the sons, strong men. They tried to break this bundle of twigs. They were not able. He then untied it and handed out one twig to each of the children and said, now snap it. And with two pinkies, they were able to break the sticks. And he said, my children, always remember that as you are one for each other, as you are one another, each one alone, you will fall easily. But if you stick together, nothing can break you. United we stand, divided we fall. What did Esther tell Mordechai? The first thing she said, Leich kanoises kol Yehudim, go gather all the Jews. Get everyone together, get everyone back on the same page, and that's how we're going to win this war. Today, there's a lady and she goes into the post office and she says to the teller, she says, give me some Hanukkah stamps. And the teller says, what denominations? She says, even in stamps, there's denominations. Reform, conservative. Anyways. Let's remember that physically, when we're all together, when we're all respectful of each other and helpful to each other, we can have a much more united front and physically be a lot stronger. And possibly more importantly, spiritually. When we are all as one, Hashem blesses us. Just like your kids, when they're all fighting about which one is going to get the toys, the parent is very likely to take the toy away. But when we're all playing nicely, the parents want to give us everything that they can. That's the way it is with Hashem. When we are all together, when we are all kind, when we are all loving to each other, we have enough enemies from the outside. We don't need to be our own enemies. Let's love, let's care, let's be kind. Let's all get on the same page. And let us remember that everyone is different and we can all respect and we can all get along with each other. Am Yisrael Chai.
Right.
Thank you all. This is concluding. Today's lesson. This is concluding the course. This is the grand finale. Thank you all for joining us on this incredible journey. I've learned a lot. I enjoyed preparing for it. A lot of big ideas, a lot of new ideas. And before we finish, there's two things that I want to do. Three things, actually. Number one is to ask, if you had 30 seconds to sell this course to someone, to explain to them why it's so important for them to take this course, what would you tell them?
Okay.
It teaches you how to understand the roots of anti-Semitism and the causes and the strategy for dealing with it moving forward so that it doesn't become a problem in our lives.
Beautiful. Thank you, Leib Moshe. Auntie Nina, what would you do? What would you say to someone how this course can help their lives?
Well, as Leib Moshe said, it gives you a different perspective, and you won't respond out of just on the spur of the moment without thought and consideration of, is this the best way? You become automatic if you don't. This course will help you to consider other aspects, and you won't have your usual go-to automatic response, which may not be helpful at all. You will find
Beautiful.
out.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, good. So, three more things. Number one, Leib Moshe. We are hosting a Hanukkah party on Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. I'm going to send you a text message with the details, but if you are able to make it, we'd love to see you. It's going to be at our house.
Oh, how lovely.
Can I come?
We'd love for you to come. If you can make it, we'd love for you to be there. Number two, in mid-January, I don't know the exact date yet, but we will be having an incredible event. I'm not sure if it'll be live or Zoom or hybrid. I haven't decided that yet, but it is an incredible event called Judaism, a Soundtrack.
Oh, yes.
Judaism, a Soundtrack. Stay tuned for more information on that. And right now, I am going to pitch for the next course starting, I believe, the first week of February, called Meditation from Sinai. And I am going to share I am going to spend 90 seconds over here, and we will, here we are. 1 second. Going to show you this course video, and I will share a link to the next course in the recap email. So where is this? Share screen, optimize video clip, Windows Media Player, and play. Okay, I hope that came through clearly. I am very, very, very excited about this course because this course is not just going to be about meditation, 6 weeks of, it's a 6-week course, this one. It's not just about meditation and a Jewish way of meditation. It is going to take some of the fundamental concepts of Hasidus and help us figure out how to apply them practically in our lives. So get ready for a 6-week journey to applying some of the lofty Hasidic ideas, first of all, learning about them and making them practical in our lives. I'm excited because it's something that I work on and I try to do. and I'm excited to see how the course is going to pull that together. I will send a link to sign up in the lesson 4 recap with the recordings, and I hope that I will see you there.
I'm sorry, what's the name of it? I lost power on top of everything.
Oh wow. Okay, Joan, I will send you a
On my
link to
phone.
the course video, and you'll see it. It's beautiful. Yes, Auntie
bit-
Nina.
Just the title.
Yes,
Oh,
I
the
just
title is
wanted to-
Meditation from Sinai.
Thank you.
we're finishing, but I just wanted to ask you if Joan, do you live near Rabbi Heidingsfeld?
I'm very fortunate that I do, Baruch Hashem. Yes.
Well, okay, Shmuley, I wonder if you could. Do you have a copy of Storyteller Volume 1?
You know, I don't think I do. I might.
Please, if you
might.
can find it, it's there's 3 volumes of it. The first one's the best, and in it is that story about a face reflects, yes, one face reflects the other, so there's
Right.
one heart, water. But anyway, so it's a beautiful story. It's put in a story form. It's not all about Rivka. It's just saying about Rivka and Jacob that was put in it. It's based on that, but I think you'd like this story.
Thank you.
Okay, I will see if I have it. I will try to remember to make sure that I have it.
Well, Joan, if you want it, you can ask.
Oh, Joan, you'll be coming on Tuesday night, so let's look through the bookshelves together when you come.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Wishing you all a very, very, very happy Hanukkah, and we will see
Good.
you all soon. I'm sad to take a break for a few weeks from these wonderful lessons, and I hope to see you all soon, very soon. How about we spend Shabbos already in Yerushalayim with Mashiach? That sounds good.
Yes, except you're
Thank
having
you.
winter there.
Yes.
Never mind.
Thank you.
It'll be lovely. Okay, like Moshe, Joan, and Rabbi Shmuley, a good Yom Tov, and also happy Hanukkah. You've still got the 20th of Kislev Day, so good Yom Tov, and soon it will be Hanukkah.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining, and may you all be blessed.